Hello everyone, I'm Joe Cronin and welcome to the Toss-Up. It's only mid-February, but there's an IU sport that begins its season this week. Indiana baseball is back for the 2025 season as first pitch of the year will be this weekend in Surprise, Arizona. We might have a surprise this episode as well, so stick around and roll that intro because it's all coming up next on the Toss-Up. It's great to be back talking about Indiana baseball. It's also great to be back sitting in this chair. This is the first episode I've hosted all semester. Regardless, June 2nd, that was the last time the Hoosiers took to the field when they fell to Southern Mississippi in the Knoxville Regional. With roster turnover, a top 15 recruiting class, and of course the All-American Devin Taylor, year 7 of the Jeff Mercer era is ready for the first pitch of the Indiana season out in Surprise, Arizona for the Sanderson Ford College Baseball Classic. Here to preview the season in this wall-to-wall baseball talk, we have Zach Browning from thehoosier.com, Kara Adams and Josh Pos from IUSTV Sports. And to preface, this episode was supposed to be brought to you by the 416.5, but Ben Howler, one of the voices for IU baseball for Hoosier Country, has prior obligations, whatever that means. But Kara, we're so glad to have you. We're so glad to have you. It's even better than having Ben Howler because he's gone shockingly. But IU baseball is back. How are we feeling?
Fantastic.
Why?
I literally don't think I could feel any better currently than I feel right now. I'm so excited for the season.
I'm excited for the season as well. I think they're going to be a really fun team to watch. They've got a good group of guys, and I think it's going to be a fun season.
I think this team has gotten its taste of success and wants more, so the offseason has been fun. Like you said, Joe, top 15 recruiting class, all this extra motivation with going out to Southern Miss. Should be a fun season.
Yeah, so you guys have been around this team for quite a while now. Obviously, season starts this weekend, but there's been a lot of practices, open practices, talking with Mercer and some players. What have you guys noticed so far? Josh, I'll go to you in this time, in this around a half month, a little over 3 weeks of practices. Anything standing out?
I think this team is closer than the teams we've seen before. And not that we're just seeing it, we're hearing it from the players too. We've heard it from multiple guys during these media availabilities. We even heard it from Coach Mercer. This team is connected. They're doing things off the field together. You didn't really hear about that last year. You kind of heard about it about certain groups. There was a lot of grouping with the team. Now it just seems to be a collective effort, so they seem to be a much more cohesive unit, and that will push them forward as they go into play.
That'll be big come May, and if they can make it deep into June. Carol?
So, yeah, I agree with Josh. It's clear the chemistry is there, and if the chemistry is there off the field, it's certainly going to correlate onto the field. And I think that's something that they weren't necessarily missing last season, but it just, anytime you have a great team chemistry and the cohesion is there, then you know you're going to see success.
Zachary?
This is a deep team. I think that's really perhaps what stands out the most. This is a deep team, not just in the position player room in the outfield. There's plenty of guys, plenty of bodies to fill all 3 outfield spots. The infield kind of a little bit more experienced in that realm. But then on the pitching side of things, there's a lot of guys, a lot of dudes, as Jeff Mercer would say, to throw out there and not even eat innings, but just give a lot of innings throughout a weekend, throughout a midweek game as well.
We're definitely going to touch on some of the new guys and some of this loaded deep roster that you're talking about. First, I want to talk about some of the losses from last season because there were some talented guys that are no longer with the program, whether it was to the draft, graduating. So, Zach, back to you. Who was the biggest loss from last year?
For me personally, it was Brock Tibbetts. You know, a guy that could play catcher, he could play first base, probably the best defensive player on the team last season, and we know Jeff Mercer loves his defense. He's always going to put defense first on that side of things. But he was also fantastic at the plate, Tibbetts was. He was great off the field. He was just fantastic all around. He meant so much to this Indiana team. I think he's a big loss because he played a position that was a premium position. He played first base. He could play catcher. So Indiana's going to have to find a way to kind of fill in that production lost at that premium position.
It'll be tough, especially early on. Kara?
Yeah, for me, it's Carter Matheson. I think he provided so much consistent offensive production at the plate, and just kind of losing that will be difficult for Indiana. But like we've said, they have this deep roster, but he just provided such a good offensive spark, and when you needed a big play, he brought it.
Josh?
Going 2 guys from the mound. I'm going with the 1-2 punch last year. It's Ty Bothwell and Connor Foley. These guys were the aces of the staff. Indiana was able to get 5-6 innings out of them every single outing over the weekend,
And they have pitchers this year, but you don't really have starters quite like those two. And Ty Bothwell, Connor Foley drafted Ty Bothwell, I think playing independent ball, Zach, am I right?
Yeah.
Thank you. So these are two really good players that Indiana's going to miss. And Connor Foley actually was left after his sophomore season, was an old sophomore left, but is still around with the program, is what Jeff Mercer said.
We'll keep it on the pitching while we're on the topic. Losing those two guys, I mean, those are some big shoes to fill because Foley had some great outings, Bothwell as well. I mean, who do you see kind of stepping up this season? Obviously, Zach mentioned it's a deep bullpen that they have, but do they have a guy that can get 6 innings from what you've noticed? Obviously, once you get into the season, someone might rise to the occasion, but anyone come to mind right now?
I don't think it's someone a starter as of right now, but someone I'm looking for to get good innings in relief, 4 or 5 innings in relief, is Drew Burr. He's the stopper, preseason stopper. A watch list just came out today. I think that he can give you 4 innings of good ball, and he showed it towards the end of the year, struggled early in March and April, but when May came around, he was the bona fide guy to go from the 4th inning to maybe even the 8th.
Carol?
I'm going to go with Ryan Kraft. He had such a good summer, up in the Northwood Leagues. He just was such a good reliever for his team and just had a really great summer. So I think he's probably definitely looking to carry that into their season.
Zach?
I'm going to go with the opening day starter. That's Gavin Siebold. He's trusted to be the frontline type of guy for this rotation this season. And we talked to Jeff Mercer today. The reason why he's a frontline guy is because the mentality he's able to carry himself with. You kind of have to be a little bit different to be an ace of a staff, and especially on a team like this in a Big Ten program like Indiana. You have to be a little bit different. And Siebold's a little bit different. He's got 4 pitches that he can use as well. He's got the mentality. He's got the stuff. He's got everything that you need to be a Friday guy for this Indiana team. Will he be as good as Bothwell or Foley was last year? Probably not. If he is, then Indiana's going to be really successful this season. But even if he's not, he's still got the ability to go 4 or 5, maybe even 6 innings on any given Friday night.
He's also an Indiana guy, and alongside another transfer, Cole Gilly from Indiana State, has some experience with one of the top teams. I think he can make some sort of an impact. Now, going in back with the losses, filling in those shoes, Zach, with you, I mean, of maybe the freshman, underclassmen, who do you see kind of making a leap from last year into this year? Maybe a freshman comes in or someone who's now rising up in the ranks.
I don't know. That's a tough question because there's so many different guys you could choose from. You could take an easier answer and say Devin Taylor and say he's going to continue to be a top 5 pick. I mean, Devin Taylor's going to go from All-American to better All-American.
Super All-American.
Josh Pine's back again. He could be fantastic. Really anybody in the infield. But I'm going to go with Jake Hanley because he's going to get pretty much the everyday reps at first base. Coach Mercer, I've already talked about it. He likes guys that can play defense. He likes people that can handle the glove in the field, and that's exactly what Hanley provides at that first base position. So Hanley's going to be in the lineup. What he does with his reps in the lineup, what he does with his at-bats, that's up to him. But if he's going to be in there consistently, he's going to figure it out at some point. He's got the talent. He's a top 50, top 75 recruit in the entire country, and if the defense is going to put him on the field, the bat will come around eventually.
Everybody loves to hit, but he likes to get down and dirty, and sometimes that's what you need. Kara, who's stepping up this season?
Well, I think there's a lot of different guys who could step up. Andrew Wiggins. I think Jake Stadler is just going to continue to grow after he had such a good season last season after coming from Purdue. But I'm going to go with Jason Oliver. Such a strong freshman season, all Big Ten freshman team. He set the single game record, RBI record at Minnesota with 10 of them. Just a very consistent hitter throughout last season. So I think he'll make another big jump.
Josh.
I think a wild card for me is a former infielder. It's going to be Joey Brancheski to me. He's going to that DH role. He was a catcher coming into Indiana, went to first base with Brock Tibbetts going down, and he really flourished. His bat struggled at times, and that's what's going to happen as a freshman. And I think that he has a chance to grow as a hitter. He's focusing on hitting. He's going to grow as a hitter. And maybe, I believe, corner outfield is where he's going to be slotted in at some point this season. But I think his bat is really going to push Indiana over the edge at that DH spot.
Our next topic is going to be based off the expectations of this team. I'm going to throw different questions out to all of you, and then we'll wrap up with ones that you all answer. Josh, yours is about this non-conference slate. What's the expectations? Because it's not as difficult as it was last year, but there's still tough teams like Oregon State and Indiana State. How many wins do you need to get? Obviously, I don't know exactly how many, but how important is it to not slip up like they did against PFW last year?
Well, if you want to host, you can't slip up. You can avoid a Wednesday midweek loss, or you can afford, not avoid. And I believe that this team is scheduled to play less top-tier talent, because the last few years they've gone out to down south to SEC, Big 12, Baylor last year. But this year with the Big 10 having an expanded schedule, Jeff Mercer wanted to stay a little bit slower. And Oregon State, I believe on Saturday, will give Indiana that measuring stick. We'll see what kind of team this is, because Oregon State's going to throw one of their best at you. And you're going to have to see how you respond, how these bats will respond, because you haven't had time to really play outside. Arizona, not hot right now, but a lot warmer than here in Bloomington. So Mellencamp to surprise, it could be a surprise.
I like the use of surprise this episode. We've been slinging it around a lot. Kara, yours, it would be a shame to not mention Devin Taylor in this episode. He's 12 home runs from breaking the all-time home run record at IU. My question is, what is his expectations, and when does he break it? Because I do think it's happening this season.
Well, I agree with you. I think every single person is excited to watch Devin Taylor play this season. And I think that could bring a lot of added pressure to him. But when we've talked to him these past couple of weeks in media, he's very level-headed. He's very just focused on the team and on the season. I'm sure all of those accolades in preseason and top 10 MLB draft pick are in the back of his mind, but I think the way he has his mindset right now, he's just focused on the team and accomplishing what's best for them. But I think he will break that record. Maybe let's maybe April, around then, maybe.
Okay.
Hopefully, but
Mark your calendars.
Mark your calendars. Maybe a weekend series in April. He'll get it done.
Weekend.
All right.
And hopefully it'll be here too at Bar Kaufman. That'd be even better.
That would be historic. That would be cool. So Zach, yours is about the offense as a whole. Like you mentioned, very deep roster. They've set some records before. I mean, how good can this offense be?
Well, it was one of the best offenses of the Big Ten last year, and yes, you lost a couple of guys that contributed to that like Brock Tibbetts, like Carter Matheson, like you mentioned. But this is an offense. This is still a team that's probably offense first. They're more score runs than they are prevent runs in that type of situation. They're a team that's going to put runs on the board against anybody. This offense can travel, and I think that's what we'll really see throughout the early stages of the season. Can this offense compete with the likes of Oregon State? Can they compete with some of the Big 12 teams, the SEC teams? I think that'll be the biggest test, because they're going to need this offense to produce at the rate they've had for the last couple of seasons. And you're exactly right, Joe. 1 through 9, maybe even 10, 11, 12. There's some depth guys in there too. This team can hit. It starts at the top with guys like Devin Taylor, but then I mentioned Jake Hanley, Joey Brincheski. There's depth throughout this order. There's no easy spot. There's no time for a pitcher to go, you know what, I got this guy coming up. That's an easy strikeout. I can kind of settle down. No, it's got to be attack every single second if you're an opposing pitcher, because this lineup is so good 1 through 9.
They're going to have some fun this year on the bats, I imagine. Last two questions going around is for everybody. Big Ten standings, they're projected third, I believe. Where are they finishing?
I think this team will probably finish around second, maybe pushing for a Big Ten title. It's going to take the pitching to match the offense and the bats and the run producing for this team to win the Big Ten outright in the regular season. But I would say second would be where I'd slot Indiana.
Kara.
Yeah, I'd go with second or third. I think, like you said, pitching, just making sure everyone stays healthy as well. No injuries, that'll definitely help them, and just consistency, I think.
Josh.
Slumps have to vary. You can't have 4 guys in a slump at once. They have to vary. I think they finish. It'll come down to that final weekend. I don't know if it'll come down to the Sunday, but I think it's Purdue weekend, so it would be a really fun weekend against Purdue here in Bloomington.
Against your rival as well. Last one is about the NCAA tournament. This is a team back-to-back seasons, went to SEC country, couldn't move on to the Supers. They haven't been to Supers in quite some time. Is this the year?
That's a good question. It all depends on draws, really, and who's healthy. It's hard to predict what's going to happen in June. Zach and I have been.
So we're making bold predictions, though.
Bold prediction. Sure. Let's give it. Okay. They're going to be a top 2 seed and go to one of those double-digit seeds, wherever that may be, and maybe escape and go to a Super.
All right, Kara.
I think they can make it to a Super. Even just at media, Jake Sadler said their goal is to host a regional and get to the Super Regional. So, I mean, I think we've said it. They've got the depth. It's just a lot of, can the pitching match up to the offense, and just kind of staying consistent and not having those like kind of tough losses the way they did last season, like to Ball State, like to Purdue Fort Wayne. So just making sure you get those wins. Not that it's an easy win, but one that you can definitely have under your belt.
Zach.
I'll say yes, because why not, right? Why not? I'll say yes.
Original.
I do think I want to add this team. To win a regional and to make it to the Super Regional and go far in college baseball, you have to have multiple Devin Taylors. So we got to see if this team has multiple Devin Taylors. We know they have one. We can confirm they have one Devin Taylor.
They do have a Devin Taylor.
But they got to figure out if they have multiple guys that can go out and win you a game single-handedly. If it's a regional on a Saturday and you need a starter to go 7 innings, do they have that guy in the roster? We'll find out. If they do, super regionals it is.
Do they have Peter Cerruto, though?
Who knows? Who knows? Kentucky Proud Park.
Exactly.
A lot of expectations with this team. Josh, Kara, Zach, thank you so much. I'm going to respectfully ask you to leave the studio because coming up after the break, we have a very special guest joining the toss-up. Don't go anywhere.
The Toss-Up, Fridays on IUSTV.
Welcome back to the Toss-Up. As promised, we have a special guest for this show, and that's none other than Indiana baseball's very own Tyler Cerny. Tyler, thank you so much for joining us in studio today. Ready to talk some ball?
Yeah, let's do it.
Season's here, pretty much. I mean, it's on the doorstep. Friday's first game. How are you feeling that season's back?
I'm excited, really excited, confident. Got a lot of returning players that I think are going to make a huge impact, and a lot of newcomers that are going to do the same thing. So we're really looking forward to this season. Got some, pretty big expectations, and I think we can meet them. So we're looking forward to it.
There are some big expectations now. I want to talk off-season a little bit. Obviously, with baseball, it's year-round. You got fall ball. Really not much time off before you're back in the batting cages again, but were you able to enjoy any time off between that?
Couple weeks probably. After summer ball's over, you have 2 weeks until you got to report back to school, and obviously we get the winter break off to kind of be with family, enjoy, take your mind off of baseball a little bit, kind of reset your mind, and so yeah, not a lot of downtime.
Now, as you saw this team start to get together, especially in fall ball, I mean, anything start to click where you see a connection, some bonds starting to form, and where it's like, okay, this team, like you said, with the expectations, it can be real?
Yeah. Obviously this team has a lot of new transfers, obviously some freshmen, so a lot of new faces early on, so obviously it takes some time to get used to those kind of people, see what kind of people they are. But personally, I think I love everybody on the team, and I know that they're going to go to battle every single day for me and the team to win, and I trust them to do that. So, yeah. Any
funny stories or bonding trips or something along those lines that you guys have done so far, or has it just kind of been strictly business?
It's been a lot of business. Obviously we have time to hang out, watch the Super Bowl or play ping pong in the locker room, whatever it may be. But we're doing a lot of things, to get tight as a group, and I think that's really important. As a team to be close like that.
Absolutely, being tight-knit, that's the best recipe for success, really.
Yep.
Before we get into this upcoming season, I want to talk about last year a bit. Obviously, down in that Knoxville regional, we were talking a little bit before this. Just what did you kind of learn from last season, and then the way it kind of ended, what that kind of show about maybe yourself and this team?
Yeah, I thought last year there was some times where we, didn't perform the way we probably should have. Left some meat on the bone, as per se. Like a couple games we dropped where we probably shouldn't have dropped them. So going to this year, big emphasis on being just a consistent team, playing the same way every single game, no matter who we're playing. Just going out there, preparing the same way for an SEC team or other team. So that's a big thing for us going into this year.
The thing about baseball can really be any given day is an on day or an off day. What's kind of the recipe to be consistent once the season gets going?
I think it's just focus, being focused on what you're doing at the moment, doing your job. That's a big thing we talk about, just doing your job, whatever that may be. If you're the 3-hole or if you're the shortstop or if you're the center fielder or the bench player needs to bring energy to help the team, you do that. So if we could do that as a team collectively, I think we're going to, be very successful.
You're an upperclassman now.
Yeah.
What have you learned from your first 2 years here at Indiana?
Learned a lot from a lot of different people. A lot of different leaders, they lead differently. So Philip Glasser was one that for me, that was a big mentor in the way I'm not going about playing. He was a professional in what he did. If I had a question, I knew I would always go to him and he'd have an answer for me. So I'm trying to be like that, to the younger guys, pass on what I've learned from him. And then other things that I've picked up on, from playing for 2 years now. So yeah, and then another thing would be, it's being more of a vocal leader. It's different, once you've been an underclassman, you're kind of almost not forced to be quiet, but you feel like you don't want to say as much as you probably should. But so that's been a good challenge for me this year, is just finding that leadership role, being verbal, and knowing when to say the right things.
What would you think is the most valuable piece that Glasser told you or talked to you about or showed you in those years prior that you're trying to carry with yourself and also pass along?
Just a lot of mental things, just being where your feet are, like I've said. Not worrying about, if you're in a slump and you get out, don't take it any differently as if you're like hitting it hot and you get out. Like, you're not going to care as much as if you're in a slump. Just kind of being the same guy every single day, no matter what. Preparing the same way, practicing the same way, thinking about it the same way, being confident in yourself. So there's some big things that I've learned from him.
And this game's about adversity.
Mhm.
And I feel like you've had your fair share of adversity, especially in high school. I mean,
Yeah.
I won't tell your story if you don't mind kind of sharing what went on. What was it, your junior year of high school, if I'm not mistaken?
Yep. Yeah, junior year, right before baseball season started. Just kind of had some body aches after one practice. Didn't think much of it. A couple of days later, it didn't really go away. Kind of kept getting worse. Went to a doctor. They gave me some medicine. Didn't help. Kind of kept getting worse. Had some major pain in joints and stuff. Really just was sick, really sick. Ended up being in the hospital for a week. Just running tests. Couldn't figure anything out really. But then they, sent me. I started to get better. They started giving me some steroid, medication injections, and that helped me kind of get the sickness out of me. But I had lost a lot of weight, a lot of muscle mass. So that was a real struggle trying to get that back. It was a real grind, working out, eating more than I had been. And I really wouldn't say I was, the same person or player as I was until like a year later. Like, it took that long to, get back to where I had been. Learned some things along the way. I learned, anything can be taken away from you at any moment. Not to take anything for granted.
Yeah.
Just, being in the moment, be thankful for where you are, and just enjoy it.
Obviously, you mentioned the physical toll, losing weight, and then having to regain that strength. What was the mental toll like as well? Because, I mean, you're away from the game. You're so unsure. You have professionals in the field unsure of what condition you have.
Yeah, it was tough for sure. Sitting in the hospital bed while your team's playing, when you should be out there, playing, cheering them on, having fun. It is tough, sitting there. But I knew that if I could, I could do whatever I could to get back to what I used to have been. And I had a lot of support around me, family, friends, even Coach Mercer at the time, was telling me, don't worry about us. Like, I was already committed at the time.
Yeah.
So that was a real reassurance, knowing that your future coach believes in you that much. So it really helped me believe in myself, to get back working, get back to where I was. So that was a real help.
Your first game back after all of this, what was that like? Emotional?
Yeah, it was a good feeling. My first at bat, I remember it was in the sectional of that year. I couldn't, like, the bat felt like it was a freaking oar. Like, I couldn't swing it very well. But I made solid contact, lined out. It was a good start. But I knew I had a long way to go. So it was a good first start for that. Yeah.
You mentioned with Mercer. I mean, how big was that Coach Mercer and the staff and the team as a whole were able to stay committed to you and stay like this promise, and you reach your goal of playing D1 baseball?
It was really reassuring. Like I said, they believed in me from the start, and that really helped me stay on track of what I wanted to do in life. I wanted to play baseball for as long as I can, come to Indiana, play early, and I worked my tail off to do that. And now I'm just here trying to win games, compete, play for my teammates, and play for the state of Indiana.
How would you say your relationship with Mercer has grown since then and then now being an upperclassman?
Well, it's been a lot of ups and downs. There's times where he'll get on me for doing something I probably shouldn't be doing on the field, or and he'll praise me when I'm doing well. But through that whole thing, we've always stayed tight and strong. We respect each other. I respect him. He respects me, and he knows that I'm trying my best to do better, and he respects that. So I really appreciate him, always believing in me and being a mentor to me.
You mentioned before how you're here to win some games. Past 2 seasons, reached a regional down in SEC country. Learned a lot from those regionals, I imagine, in Kentucky and then Tennessee last year.
Mm-hmm.
What are the goals this year? I mean, you're trying to get to that next step into the Supers?
Yeah, obviously we've made, the last 2 regionals. For me, I've been a part of 2 teams now that's made the regional. So now the goal is just to take that next step, to host. That's our ultimate goal, is to host, because that gives us the best chance at a Super. So we're going to do everything in our power to do that.
You have any personal goals? I mean, you've been tagged with some postseason Big Ten honors on the 3rd team last year, all Big Ten freshman team in 2 years ago in your freshman season. You got any personal? Like, you want to get the 1st team All-American nods, or does it really matter to you?
I don't really care that much about that stuff. I care about, what the team gets, the Big Ten trophy, the regular season or the tournament, the regional, whatever it may be. I care more about that than any personal accolade. And if we win, those personal accolades will come. I mean, for everybody. So
winning matters.
Right.
They showed. So you're heading to Arizona this weekend. You excited for that?
I am very excited. Looking forward to it.
Now, before we head out, any message really to the baseball world? What you want to send about Indiana baseball and really Tyler Cerny's junior season?
We're confident, and we're, looking to go out there and win some games.
Win some games indeed. Well, Tyler, thank you so much for joining the show. That's going to wrap it up for another episode of The Toss-Up. Tyler Cerny in Indiana baseball. They're out in Surprise, Arizona this weekend for the Sanderson Ford College Classic. With that, there's one thing left to do. Toss it up, hit it out of the park, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching IUSTV Sports. Be sure to subscribe at IUSTV and follow us on Instagram and X at IUSTV Sports.